Hello and welcome. I am Thomas Porteous and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Rescuers in Myanmar continue to search following a powerful earthquake that has claimed at least 1,700 lives. Hundreds are still missing as efforts expand into neighbouring Thailand to find survivors. US President Donald Trump declares he is furious with Vladimir Putin following failed efforts to broker peace in Ukraine. Speaking to NBC News, Trump says nations buying Russian oil could face a 50% tariff. French far-right leader Marine Le Pen is convicted of embezzling European Union funds in a Paris court. The conviction will see Le Pen derailed from the 2027 French presidential election. Iran's supreme leader says Washington will face a sharp response if it follows through on Trump's threat to strike Iran over the nuclear deal. The warning comes after Trump sent a letter pressuring Tehran to accept new terms or face bombing. US President Donald Trump says a new tariff plan will soon be unveiled and apply to everyone, dismissing hopes that only big trading partners would be affected by the move. US jets have struck 3 Houthi radar outposts in Yemen after attacks target US ships in the Red Sea. The escalation leads to the death of at least one person and raises regional tensions. Russian missiles target Kharkiv again for the second straight night, killing 2 and injuring dozens. The city's mayor says strikes last through the night, marking a fresh wave of intensified bombardment. Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu says negotiations continue under fire after rejecting a ceasefire plan from Arab states. He insists Hamas must lay down weapons for peace in Gaza. India has sent a field hospital with 118 specialists and medical equipment to Myanmar as the country struggles with the aftermath of a devastating earthquake. The Indian Army has also said that it would set up a 60-bed medical treatment centre to provide care to those injured in the disaster. On Saturday, India sent 5 aircrafts carrying search and rescue teams and relief material, including food, clothes and medicine to the country. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also added, as part of Operation Brahma, Inspara and carrying 40 tons of humanitarian aid, is heading to the port of Yangon. And that's not all. 2 more ships will follow with additional aid. Overall, more than 80 tons of disaster relief material and medical supplies has been sent by India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has spoken with Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, the head of Myanmar's military government, and conveyed India's condolences. According to an official statement, Modi reaffirmed India's steadfast commitment as a close friend and neighbour to stand in solidarity with Myanmar during this challenging time. India named its assistance to Myanmar as Operation Brahma after the Hindu god of creation, according to Randir Jaiswal, the spokesman of the External Affairs Ministry. Let's take a look at what the External Affairs spokesperson had to say on Saturday.
Third tranche of support that we are providing comprises a field hospital. This field hospital has around 118 specialists, including doctors and medics. This team is getting ready and will be leaving from Agra later this evening. Will be landing in Naypyidaw, and from Naypyidaw they will also be taken to Mandalay area in coordination with the support of the government of Myanmar. We understand that in the Mandalay area, where the devastation caused by the earthquake is maximum, a lot of bridges there has been a lot of damage to physical infrastructure. So there, I'm sure a lot of support would be required.
The death toll in Myanmar from Friday's powerful earthquake has jumped to more than 1,700 as more bodies were pulled from the rubble of the scores of buildings that collapsed when it struck near the country's second largest city. According to reports, around 3,400 people are injured and around 300 more are missing in Myanmar. Apart from India, Russia, China and Israel have also sent their aid and rescue teams to Myanmar and Thailand. We are now joined by Brian Thomas, correspondent for NewsX World, live from Bangkok in Thailand. Brian, what more can you tell us? What kind of updates are you getting from the ground?
Well, definitely, as per the latest information that we showed these visuals also, can understand that the Minister of Labour is now currently addressing the media. And now, just a while back, 5 Chinese nationals were also arrested because of fomenting documents, even taking documents and illegally, taking blueprints. Or right now, you can see the Minister of Labour. He is addressing the media itself. He's speaking in Thai, and he's addressing all the media who are here. And we are also trying to show you that even earlier today itself, the Prime Minister has come here. Even the Deputy Prime Minister of Thailand has also ordered a high-level inquiry and probe, and even Ministry of Industry have also said about the kind of materials that was used, because it was clearly stated that there are many high-rise buildings, many skyscrapers that did not happen that was not at all affected. Yes, there was some cracks that was there, but this is one such building. This under construction was one such building that fell prey to the earthquake. It was a joint venture between Italian Thai company and another Chinese company, which was working for 3 years now, but unfortunately because of the earthquake it fell. And the reason they are saying that, many experts, many civil engineers also saying about the materials that was used, about the cement that was used. They are questioning the material.
I believe we've had some technical issues there. Thank you very much, Brian. But we move on. Brian has also filed a ground report from Chatuchak Market. Let's take a look at that.
Well, we are at the Chatuchak Weekend Market, and this is the Bansway Junction that is partially operational because of the incident that happened on 28 March. Yes, the time has gone. It is past 1:25. The hopes seem to be losing, because 72 hours is the best time to get survivors or to find survivors. Apart from that, also you can get an understanding of the fact that this entire overbridge is closed, is sealed, because it is near the accident site, and this has been closed by the authorities. This entire overbridge that connects from one side of the road towards Bansway Junction to the other side of the road has been sealed off and has been closed. And this entire road has also been closed, so any vehicular market, any vehicular movement is clearly closed. You can see also the Chatuchak Weekend Market. Today is a Monday, and that is the reason why it is closed. Now, on the other side of the junction, other side of the bridge is open, but that very part of the overbridge is closed due to security reasons again. And this is the Chatuchak Weekend Market, which is not operational since it is a Monday. It is closed. On Mondays this is closed. But yes, the situation seems to be in a better in other parts of Bangkok. But definitely, if we talk about the State Audit Building or nearby the State Audit Building, the situation is still not that well, because the hopes are being faded as well, because the 72-hour window is also slowly closing by.
We stay in Thailand for more news updates, where 5 Chinese nationals were arrested in Bangkok's Chatuchak district for entering a restricted area and removing critical documents from the site of a collapsed building after 2 powerful earthquakes rocked the city last week. The police said that they violated an official directive and tried to remove documents, including blueprints and other paperwork, from the premises, according to local media reports. The incident was reported after an under-construction 33-storey office building in Bangkok's Chunachak district collapsed on March the 28th due to the powerful earthquake, which originated in Myanmar, killing now over 1,700 people. The documents allegedly contained architectural blueprints and other building project materials, raising concerns about their intent. Let's turn to the Middle East now, where, according to Hamas-run state media, Israeli forces have launched a series of early morning raids across the occupied West Bank, including in Nablus, Tamun, near Tabas, Kwabaka, and near Jenin, and Hussein, near Bethlehem. This comes as the Israeli military issues a new forced displacement order for the southern city of Rafah, warning of imminent intense combat operations. In Gaza, the Palestinian Red Crescent Society has recovered the bodies of 16 rescue workers killed a week ago when their ambulances came under fire near Rafah. Among the dead are 8 medics, 6 civil defense workers, and a UN agency employee. 1 medic remains missing. The Red Cross had strongly condemned the attack, calling it a violation of international humanitarian law and demanding better protection for humanitarian workers. Israel's military admitted firing on the ambulances, claiming they were suspicious and alleging that Hamas and other groups have used such vehicles for attacks. The United Nations has also condemned the incident as Israeli airstrikes on Gaza continue, with hundreds killed since operations resumed in mid-March. Let's take a listen to what the director of the Gaza hospitals, the executive director of the Red Crescent, and the United Nations official had to say about the situation.
اليوم نقف أمام جريمة كبيرة بكل المقاييس، جريمة تندى لها جبين العالمية أجمع، جريمة قتل فيها 10 من ضباط الإسعاف والدفاع المدني على مرأى ومسمع العالم بإصابات وقاتلة مباشرة وبإطلاق نار مباشر، وهم في سياراتهم، سيارات الإسعاف وسيارات الدفاع المدني. اليوم بعد 8 أيام من المماطلة سمح الاحتلال ودل على مكان دفن هؤلاء الجثامين الطاهرة. تمكنت طواقم الهلال الأحمر والإسعاف من إحضار هذه الجثامين الطاهرة لكي توارى الثرى.
8 شهداء من الهلال الأحمر الفلسطيني و6 شهداء من الدفاع المدني ارتقوا بسبب عنجهية هذا الجيش الذي لا يحترم قوانين دولية ولا معاهدات دولية ولا يراعي أي شكل من الأشكال الإنسانية في تعامله مع المؤسسات الإنسانية والصحية.
Health workers should never be a target, and yet we're here today digging up a mass grave of first responders and paramedics. 7 days ago, civil defense and PRCS ambulances arrived at the scene. One by one, they were hit, they were struck. Their bodies were gathered and buried in this mass grave. We're digging them out in their uniforms, with their gloves on. They were here to save lives. Instead, they ended up in a mass grave. Their vehicles, their ambulances, UN vehicles, civil defense vehicles are crushed and dumped, covered in sand next to us. It's an absolute horror. What has happened here? It should never happen. Healthcare workers should never be a target.
We are now joined by Joshua Barnes, correspondent for NewsX and anchor for NewsX World, to discuss this further. Joshua, what can you tell me about the most recent updates in this prolonged, complex and brutal conflict?
Yes, absolutely, Thomas. You've mentioned already the strikes, of course, that are continuing from Israeli forces this time of year for people living in Gaza, Palestinians, of course. It's part of the holy month of Ramadan. We are now in Eid, second day of celebrations for Eid. So we are looking really at a difficult time for those living in Gaza, given the fact that these bombs are continuing. You mentioned already, of course, in Rafah, another evacuation order. Rafah, a place which during the initial phase of the war saw a lot of bombing, a lot of displacement as well, a lot of people moving from Rafah northwards. The memories that this will be bringing back to them of that 15-month conflict before the first phase of the ceasefire was agreed in January. But looking forward now, we are in a position where there are continued negotiations happening. Egypt have provided a second proposal. This, of course, came after a meeting of Arab nations, but at the moment it seems that Israel are not willing to move forward with it. You mentioned there, of course, they have sent a counter proposal back. Hamas have agreed to this Egypt proposal, but without both parties, no ceasefire deal will be agreed. For Israel, it's very simple. Hostages are still being held dead and alive. Hamas are still operating, and for them, there is a risk of Hamas launching another offensive like what we saw on October the 7th, 2023. So the safeguards need to be in place. Israel, of course, looking for Hamas to be disbanded and outside of Gaza. We can't forget as well the ramifications of Donald Trump and his impact and influence in these negotiations that we have seen. He has his own proposal for Gaza, the Riviera of the Middle East, which may be a part of any future plans. But as it stands at the moment, a further impasse, as we've seen for recent weeks since that first phase of the ceasefire came to an end, and Israeli attacks continued without the release of hostages from Hamas.
Joshua Barnes, thank you very much. You are staying with us. We now stay in Israel now, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has taken the last stand to defend himself against corruption allegations in a long-running trial. He is the first sitting Israeli Prime Minister to testify as a criminal defendant. The case, which began in May 2020, was delayed due to the Israel-Hamas war and resumed in December of last year. Netanyahu faces 3 separate cases of fraud, bribery and breach of trust. Prosecutors allege that he accepted luxury gifts from a billionaire, provided regulatory favours worth nearly €500,000 in exchange for positive media coverage, and sought preferential treatment from a major newspaper. Netanyahu has denied all of these charges, calling the case a politically motivated witch hunt. If convicted, he could face up to 10 years in prison for bribery and 3 years for fraud and breach of trust. The case is added to the political turmoil in Israel, which critics accusing Netanyahu of trying to weaken the judiciary to protect himself. However, he has rejected claims that his judicial overhaul efforts were linked to his legal battles. We move over to Europe now, where France's Marine Le Pen has been found guilty of misappropriating European funds to finance her far-right National Rally Party, in a case which could lead her from being barred from standing in the 2027 presidential election. Judges could also not decide to impose automatic ineligibility with her conviction, which would leave her free to stand in 2027 during an appeals process. Le Pen was accused, along with more than 20 other senior party figures, of hiring assistants who worked on her RN party affairs rather than for the European Parliament, which paid them. European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde has said that Europe should move towards economic independence as US President Donald Trump prepares to unleash a new wave of tariffs. Trump has vowed to impose reciprocal tariffs on a wide range of trade partners, including in Europe. Trump claims that the US has been taken advantage of for too long. Lagarde has called Trump's imposition of tariffs an existential moment for Europe. She says the EU must show it won't just back down as it readies its response to US tariffs. The European Central Bank warns the trade war could hurt the Eurozone's economy. Growth could drop by 0.3% in the first year, and even more if Europe fights back. Lagarde had a clear message: a trade war has no winners. Over to the US now, where US President Donald Trump is making waves in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. He's pushing for a ceasefire deal, But with a catch, Trump is urging Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky to sign over exclusive mineral rights to US firms, and he's not happy with Vladimir Putin, slamming the Russian leader for questioning Zelensky's credibility. Meanwhile, fighting rages on. Russian and Ukrainian forces exchange fire in Russia's Kursk region. Ukraine claims it shot down 65 Russian drones overnight. And in Kharkiv, a military hospital was hit by Russian drone strikes, injuring soldiers. Amid all this, Russia is floating a new idea, setting up a UN-supervised temporary administration in Ukraine. But that would need backing from all UN Security Council members. And in Kiev, Dutch Defence Minister Ruben Breckelsmans warns that Ukraine needs military aid now as Russia ramps up its attacks. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
Ukraine basically needs more of everything: ammunition, armed vehicles, drones, air defense. And we as Europeans, but also the United States, we need to keep up our deliveries. We also see that Russia is putting more and more equipment, more and more troops, more and more of everything at the battlefield. And we need to make sure that Ukraine can negotiate from a position of strength.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced that over 24,000 people with no right to remain in the UK have been removed since Labour took office. He contrasted this with the previous government's Rwanda deportation scheme, which he scrapped, calling it a costly failure. Starmer claimed it would have taken 80 years for the Rwanda plan to match Labour's removal numbers. This announcement comes as the UK hosts an international summit on organised immigration crime with over 40 countries and organisations, including the US, France and Vietnam, discussing ways to combat illegal immigration and human smuggling. Starmer emphasised the need for international cooperation, calling human smuggling a vile trade that exploits weaknesses between nations. The summit aims to tackle every stage of the illegal migration industry, from small boat supply chains to the use of social media for smuggling operations. Let's take a listen to what Starmer had to say.
We can only smash these gangs once and for all if we work together. Because this evil trade, it exploits the cracks between our institutions. It pits nations against one another. It profits from our inability at the political level to come together.
With immigration a key concern for UK voters, the government is under pressure to show results. Starmer's approach focuses on enforcement and international collaboration to curb illegal crossings and disrupt smuggling networks. Moving on now, US President Donald Trump has threatened to impose secondary tariffs of up to 50% on buyers of Russian crude oil. If Moscow does not support a ceasefire in Ukraine, his warning targets key importers India and China, raising major questions about how global energy markets will react. India currently relies on Russia for nearly 30% of its oil imports, while China remains one of Russia's largest enemy consumers. A US tariff on Russian crude oil could force these nations to reconsider their energy policies or face higher costs. For Russia, Trump's move could significantly impact its economy, which depends heavily on oil exports. Meanwhile, OPEC members may see this as an opportunity to raise prices and increase their own market share. On the other hand, he said secondary tariffs will apply on Iran depending on whether they agree to a deal. He made it clear he prefers diplomacy over alternatives. Let's listen in to what US President Donald Trump had to say about the issue.
We're going to make a decision on secondary tariffs on Iran based on whether or not they're going to make a deal. If they're going to make a deal, then we're never going to put secondary tariffs on. We're going to hope they have a great, long, and successful life as a country. But we'll see what happens. It's very, very interesting. I can't imagine them doing anything else but making a deal. I would prefer a deal.
Trump also weighed in on TikTok, confirming strong interest from buyers and signaling that the final decision rests on him. On the auto industry, he stressed that American manufacturers stand to benefit the most from his policies. Let's listen in.
the automakers are going to make a lot of money, the American automakers, or international automakers if you're talking about they're going to build in the United States. The people that are going to make money are people that manufacture cars in the United States. Outside of the United States, that's going to be up to them. I don't care too much about that.
Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has issued a strong warning to the United States. In a live speech, he said Iran would retaliate forcefully if attacked. Khamenei dismissed US threats as mischief, but vowed a decisive response if any action is taken. His remarks come amid rising tensions between Washington and Tehran. Let's listen to what Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had to say.
ملت‌های دنیا عصبانی‌اند، ناراحتند تا اونجایی که اطلاع دارن از بسیاری از مسائل، از جنایات کشورهای دنیا، ملت‌های دنیا اطلاع ندارن. اینی که می‌بینید تو خیابان‌های اروپا و حتی آمریکا علیه رژیم صهیونیستی شعار میدن به خاطر اطلاعات محدود اونهاست. اطلاعات بیشتری داشته باشن، بیشتر از این هم میکنن. نتیجه این حرفایی که عرض میکنم اینه که این گروه تبهکار باید از فلسطین ریشه کن بشود. مواضع ما همه بدانند، مواضع ما همون مواضعی است که بود. دشمنی آمریکا و رژیم صهیونیستی هم همونی است که بود. تهدید میکنن که شرارت خواهند کرد. البته اگر شرارتی انجام بگیره ما خیلی اطمینان نداریم، احتمال زیاد نمیدیم که از بیرون شرارتی انجام بگیره، اما اگر شرارتی انجام بگیره قطعاً ضربه متقابل محکم خواهد.
Iran has rejected direct talks with the United States over its nuclear program. This announcement comes after US President Donald Trump sent a letter to Iran's supreme leader, urging Tehran to reach a new deal. President Masoud Pezeshkian confirmed the decision, saying that Iran does not trust Washington and will only engage in direct talks. Pezeshkian also said Iran's policy remains unchanged, and it said it will not negotiate under pressure or threats. Let's listen to what the Iranian president had to say.
مقام معظم رهبری در رابطه با نامه‌ای که ترامپ فرستاده، مذاکره به طور مستقیم رد شده، اما مذاکره به طور غیر مستقیم همیشه ایران در اون رابطه بوده و الان هم مقام معظم رهبری تاکید فرمودن که مذاکره غیر مستقیم همچنان میتونه ادامه داشته باشه.
Donald Trump has responded with a strong warning. He threatened to bomb Iran and said that a decision on secondary tariffs on Iran would be made in the coming weeks, depending on Iran's actions. Let's take a listen to what Donald Trump had to say.
We're going to make a decision on secondary tariffs on Iran based on whether or not they're going to make a deal. If they're going to make a deal, then we're never going to put secondary tariffs on. We're going to hope they have a great, long, and successful life as a country. But we'll see what happens. It's very interesting. I can't imagine them doing anything else but making a deal. I would prefer a deal to the other alternative, which I think everybody in this plane knows what that is. And that's not going to be pretty, and I do not.
In response to Trump's threat, reports from Tehran suggest Iran's military has put missiles on high alert. Underground bases across the country now hold launch-ready missiles, which officials say they can withstand airstrikes. Iran has previously warned that any attack on its territory would spark a major conflict. Tensions between Washington and Tehran have been escalating since Trump withdrew from the US 2015 nuclear deal and reimposed sanctions on the country. Since then, Iran has stepped up its uranium enrichment program, moving closer to weapons-grade levels. The US and Israel have both warned that they will not allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon, raising fears of a military confrontation in the region. We are now joined by Joshua Barnes, anchor and correspondent for NewsX World. Joshua, what can you tell me about a bit more about this issue?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think it's important first we go back and look at the plan that you mentioned that was made in 2015. This deal, the deal was made between Iran and several leading countries. We're looking at, of course, the United States, China, Russia, the European Union, leading nations across the world. And this basically saw sanctions lifted on Iran in return for a call on their behalf saying that they would limit their nuclear advancements. There was fear then, of course, that Iran would move towards full nuclear mobilization. But as you've mentioned, in 2018, the states did withdraw from this agreement and this deal, lifting those, reinforcing sanctions from before. Other nations still have sanctions lifted. What this means is that Iran have basically seen the deal as pretty much null and void, because the US were the people who came with this proposal, and since the states have withdrawn and carried on putting sanctions on Iran, they have moved forward their nuclear program. Now, looking at Donald Trump in his current administration, his now second term, he of course was the person who withdrew them in 2018, but he is looking at the situation in the Middle East and looking at the potential ramifications if Iran were to have nuclear weapons. We know, of course, Israel are fighting wars on several fronts, and these are mostly against groups that are backed by Iran, militant groups that are backed by Iran. The fear in this, the geopolitical fear, the global fear, is that if Israel with nuclear capabilities and Iran with nuclear capabilities were to go to war directly, there could be devastation for the area of the Middle East and across the world as well, with allies on both sides. So this situation for Trump is one that he needs to get a hold on. You've mentioned already that talks haven't been direct, but letters have been sent. Iran have signified that they're willing to continue communications with Trump and his administration indirectly, but what that means for the future, we will have to wait and see. For Trump, for him, this is very clear. He wants to get a new deal agreed. The first deal saw Iran's uranium sort of production and holding drop by 98%. That, of course, has advanced. Trump's eyes, he wants a similar deal that will see sanctions lifted, which he reinstated in his first term. This one is really hanging by a thread because, of course, as you've mentioned, clear and strong wording from Donald Trump threatening bombing Iran. The Supreme Leader Khomeini also coming back with threats of action as well. This is a tension point, it's a serious boiling point with the ongoing conflicts in the Middle East, something we will of course be keeping an eye on, but something that Trump and his administration will be working on rigorously over the next few days.
Joshua Barnes, thank you very much. Well, that is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from across the world. Thank you.